the song, never gonna do the same for you.
What's up, guys? It's Donna here.
And Holly.
And you're listening to Teaser Talk.
On switch, turn the song, never gonna do the same. You hit the on switch, turn the song, never gonna do the same for you. With these power lights.
Happy Friday the 13th, everyone.
Yeah, man. It's been a while since we've done one of these spooky themed shows. So we figured what better way to drop one in than on Friday the 13th.
And today we're going to have you guys play a game, but obviously you're going to have to keep your own score and everything else. But let us entertain you for the next, 15, 20 minutes with Fact or Fiction Horror Story Edition.
So we've gathered some stories to tell you today, and you can test whether or not they are fact or fiction. This is going to be a good one. Okay, let's start with our first story. A young couple, Josh and Emily Robbins, bought an old house. Josh is in charge of the new construction, converting the kitchen into the master bedroom. Emily was always trying her hand at home decorating, and she was inspired to remove the wallpaper to create a fresh, new look for the home. It was a very frustrating and daunting task, as the previous owner had papered every wall and ceiling. Removing it is brutal, but oddly satisfying to her. Peeling the wallpaper was the best feeling to Emily. It's similar to your skin when you're peeling from a sunburn. She'd make a game out of it, on the hunt for the longest piece before it ripped. Emily had noticed that under a corner section of paper in every room is a person's name and a date. Curiosity got the best of her one night, and she Googled one of the names and discovered the person was actually a missing person. The missing date matched the date under the wallpaper as well. The next day, she made a list of all the names and dates, and sure enough, each name was a missing person with dates to match. Excitement turned to horror to the new couple. They notified the police, who naturally sent out the crime scene team. As the couple watched their new home turn into a possible crime scene, Emily had overheard one text say, "Sir, it's human." "Human?" Emily asked. "What's human?" "Ma'am, where is the material you removed from the walls? This isn't wallpaper you were removing." Oh, snap.
It's like feeling a sunburn.
Yum. All right. So is it fact or fiction?
Drum roll, please.
That story is fiction. Fortunately or unfortunately for us weirdos, it did not happen.
I know, that'd make a good movie if it's not already one.
It would.
Okay, so next up we have Adolf Lutgarf. He opened a sausage factory in Chicago. As a German immigrant, he was excited to launch his own business. His factory grew, and he was living the American dream he always imagined. Louise, also a German immigrant, came to interview for him. Adolf abruptly dismissed her application as he knew he'd marry her one day. Before you knew it, Adolf was right. Him and Louise got married. After much success, Louise enjoyed the finer things. However, Adolf enjoyed their house-taker, Mary. The economy had taken a turn for the worst and had slowed the business down. Louise's expensive taste started to wear on the home. She couldn't stand the thought of being poor again. After loans and a bad economy, they were now broke. His housekeeper and mistress gave him the comfort that he needed, and Louise was fed up with it all. One night, a guard at the factory had overheard them arguing. Then Louise went missing. Adolf wasn't too worried about her whereabouts, which alerted her brother. That led to him finally calling the police, and there they searched the sausage factory. They found her wedding ring and part of a bone in the bottom of one of the machines. It was the trial of the century that took over the country. In the end, they found him guilty of murder. He claimed she was still alive and that she needed to be found. There was speculation that the bone found that was a pig, and the wedding ring could have been tossed in. And after 18 months in prison, he died of a heart attack. It was all that sausage boy. Anyways, it turns out she was very much alive and rooming in a house in Boston, listening to the trial the entire time. Before her housemates found out who she was long gone.
Oh my God.
So, is this story true or false?
Tell me. I need to know.
This one is a true story.
Are you serious? That's awful. She's a bitch.
She's a bitch. She really took revenge to another level. It reminds me of that movie. What is it called? Gone Girl? Where she like frames him for kidnapping and stuff.
Yep. Mm-hmm. All right, here we go. We're going to drop down another one. Let's see. So there was a man who walked into the police station covered in blood, wanting to report a murder. The man's name was Ken Parks. Ken had been going through a lot lately. His wife had noticed he had become extremely stressed and hadn't been sleeping well. The truth was, it wasn't just stress from work. He had a gambling addiction, and he'd been embezzling money from the family. When it caught up to him, Ken was at the point of complete stress and frenzy, suffering from extreme insomnia. So who did he kill? Sadly, it was his mother-in-law, and attempted to kill his father-in-law. It seemed to be an open and shut case, and because Parks was a compulsive gambler who had recently embezzled money from his own family, police believed there was a strong motive. But Parks came up with a different and totally astounding explanation. He had been watching TV and nodded off. He began sleepwalking and committed the crime while he was unconscious. He even insisted he was fast asleep when he surrendered. Ken Parks has a serious sleepwalking disorder. When he was 11 years old, his mother found him with a leg out of a 6-story window about to jump while he was sleepwalking. He missed a life sentence by avoiding a guilty verdict, and he was sentenced to a psychiatric hospital because he was judged insane. Instead, in a stunning twist of fate, he made headlines around the world when he walked out of the courtroom a free man. The case was appealed all the way to the Supreme Court, but the judges uphold the decision. Parks was a victim to his disorder that had him in a zombie state, being a living, walking, killing machine. Do you believe it?
You know what? That seems a little far-fetched. Like you killed somebody. I'm going to say that this did not happen.
Holly, it's true.
That's insane. Like literally. I don't know. Prove it.
Zombie killer. But
I'm going to appeal this case.
Double jeopardy.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to our next one. So Ed Gein was a mama's boy. He was always listening to his mom's advice about girls and alcohol, that they were not good. She was stern and thought the world was filled with evil. After his mom's passing, adult Ed found himself not knowing how to go through life. He only left the house to buy groceries and didn't handle her death too well. One day, he decided to go out to the local tavern with a local. Before long, he was back to life. He met Mary, who had actually owned the bar there, and caught his eye. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be when Mary had up and left town. He came to terms that he would never be loved. He started to volunteer to help those with the grieving process by helping out at funerals. One day, Ed had brought a gun from a lady named Bernice, and that was the last time anyone had seen her. She was a smart businesswoman, however, though, and wrote each sale and documented each time somebody had bought from her. Her last sale was to Ed. During their investigation, they discovered an upside-down, decapitated Bernice, who had been gutted like a deer at the Gein farmhouse. Police had found skulls, organs, and everything like that around his bedpost and in his home. They even found a complete woman's bodysuit made from human skin. He had admitted the attendance at funerals wasn't to confront people. It was actually to get fresh bodies. Ooh. He would come back and dig them up. Mary Hogan had never skipped town. The bartender, the one that we talked about earlier a second ago, she was at Ed's home, or the pieces were. Ed had used her skull as a soup bowl. Bernice's head was found with nails hammered into him, and her heart was in a pan in the stove. Ed was found guilty but deemed legally insane and lived out the rest of his years in a mental institution. Psychologists believe that Ed did this to reconnect with his mother in his very sick way, as a majority of his victims were elderly just like her.
I call bullshit.
Well, you need to get that bullshit meter fixed because this is actually true.
Oh, man. He was drinking soup out of a skull.
Soup out of a skull, he made like a flesh suit. So this happened in Wisconsin in 1957. And movies like Hannibal Lecter, Leatherface, Norman Bates, all those characters were inspired by Ed Gein.
Damn. Ooh. All right. Well, let's see if this last one can follow up to that creepy shit. So Anna Wilson grew up in the slums of Prohibition-era Chicago. Her family lived in a small house near the harbor, and one of her earliest memories was of a particularly hot summer when, seeking respite from the heat, she and her sister discovered a seldomly used section of boardwalk near an abandoned warehouse. Every night for several weeks, the two girls would make their way down to the docks and sit together on the edge of the pier as the sun went down. Anna vividly could recall the feel of the seaweed between her toes as she and her sister dangled their feet into the murky water. It wasn't until years later that she returned to the pier and found that the warehouse had been demolished. Curious, she made the inquiry with the Department of Planning and Development. Apparently, the warehouse had been owned for a time by the mob, who was using it as a base of operations for a local prostitution racket. It had only been discovered when an associate began disposing of arrival hookers by fitting them with concrete shoes and dumping them into the harbor. Investigators had recovered nearly 24 bodies from the waters of the secluded pier. How had the bodies been discovered? A passing fisherman spotted some of the victims' hair floating near the surface of the water, just like seaweed.
I mean, it's believable.
It is believable. It's really believable. But it's actually fiction.
Well, I'm just thankful that no one's drinking out of my skull right now and that my skin's not on a wallpaper. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this Friday the 13th special of Fact or Fiction.
So there you have it, guys. Some scary fact or fiction. Some of the true stories I find very unbelievable, and some of the fiction stories actually sound pretty believable. Seaweed hair toes. So you guys go out and make your own scary stories this Friday the 13th. But when you get arrested, don't tell them we told you so. And until next time, keep rocking.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Teaser Talk.
We look forward to seeing you next Teaser Talk Tuesday. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Teaser Talk. This way we can keep up with you guys until the next episode.